There's one reason that businesses are bringing it in. I myself feel that it's not we adults who are most in need of paying attention to attention in this way. I think it's children, because childhood has changed. Childhood has changed as a side effect of this onslaught of the digital world into our personal universe. I was talking to an 8th grade teacher who was complaining about how kids now are texting in the States. I don't know about here. Texting has overcome phone calls among teenagers as a preferred way to connect. There are kids who will send 100 texts a day to their friends. And that's not unusual. She said, you know, for 20 years, I've been teaching the same book to my 13-year-olds. It's Edith Hamilton's Mythology. And she said, in the last 2, 3, 4 years, my students are starting to say they're having trouble reading this. It's a little too hard. And she attributes it to a loss of ability to comprehend because of this constant distraction. I saw a kid, maybe 9 or 10 years old, riding a bicycle and texting while he was riding. Can you believe that? Luckily, it was in the country, on a country lane. The reason I'm worried about children is that the brain is the last organ of the body to become anatomically mature. It starts growing from birth, and it actually doesn't finish until the mid-20s. During that time, the principle of neuroplasticity is extremely important. Neuroplasticity says that repeated experiences shape the brain. Use it or lose it is another way of saying it. If a child has an experience, for example, of empathy and another experience of empathy, the circuitry for empathy grows. If a child has the experience of paying full attention and ignoring distractors, which is what we just did, the connectivity for that circuitry grows. And children need this in order for their brains to develop well. When we see a child grow and go through different phases of childhood, what we're seeing are the external signs of brain growth. And I think it's incumbent on us to help children shape their brains in the best way. I was in a classroom of 7-year-olds in Spanish Harlem in Manhattan. Spanish Harlem is a very impoverished place. The children there live in housing projects, and the projects are pretty dire. One child came to class, the teacher told me, and was a little shaken. He'd just seen somebody shot. And the teacher said, how many of you know someone who's been shot? Every hand went up. It's that kind of childhood. It's a very tough place. And I happened to be there to watch something called Breathing Buddies. Every day, this classroom, all the kids have a session where they go to their little cubbies and they get a favorite stuffed animal and they lie down on a rug on the floor. They put the animal on their belly and they watch it go up with the in-breath and down when they breathe out. And they count 1, 2, 3 on the in-breath, 1, 2, 3 on the out-breath. And they're doing exactly what we just did. Exactly what they're strengthening the capacity, the mental muscle of attention. There's something else. There's a twofer here because the same circuitry also calms stormy emotions. The ability to manage emotions is inextricably linked with the ability to pay attention. And the teacher said, you know, one day because of a scheduling problem, we had to skip this, and the class was chaotic. The class was chaotic. So it makes a huge difference for these kids. I've long been an advocate of what's called social emotional learning. Social emotional learning takes the emotional intelligence components, self-awareness, managing your inner life, empathy, handling relationships, and makes it part of the curriculum. Not in a way that takes away from academics, but in a way that enhances children's ability to handle themselves and their relationships. And children's relationships, if you're a parent, I don't need to tell you this, but from puberty on, before puberty, the most important relationships in a child's life are family. After puberty, forget family, it's other kids. And the melodramas of childhood, they didn't invite me to the party, whatever it means, capture attention. Those are emotional upsets. The more you can manage those upsets, the more attentional capacity you have to hear what the teacher is saying. One of the things they do in these classes, in these programs, I've seen this in New Haven in a neighborhood very similar to Spanish Harlem. There's a poster on the wall of every classroom. It's a stoplight, a traffic light, red light, yellow light, green light. It says, when you're upset, remember the stoplight. Red light, stop, calm down, and think before you act. Well, stop says you have a choice. Calm down means you can manage your inner turmoil. Think before you act is a very valuable lesson because it says you can't determine what emotions you're going to have. Our emotions come unbidden. But once you have them, you can stop and think what you're going to do. In fact, one definition of maturity is lengthening the gap between impulse and action. Yellow light, think of a range of things you could do and what the consequences might be. Green light, pick the best one and try it out. This is a lesson in what's called cognitive control. Some of you may know about the marshmallow test. It's a rather legendary study in psychology. 4-year-olds at Stanford University are brought into a room one by one, sat down at a small table, big juicy marshmallow put in front of them. The experimenter says to this 4-year-old, you can have the marshmallow now if you want, but if you don't eat it till I come back from running an errand, you can have 2 then. Then she leaves the room. This is a predicament that tries the soul of any 4-year-old, I assure you. I've seen video on it. Some of them will go up and sniff it as though it were dangerous and then jump back, and others go off and sing and dance to themselves in a corner to stay distracted. About a third of the kids can't stand it. They just grab it and gobble it down on the spot. And another third or so wait the endless 10, 12 minutes until the experimenter comes back and they get the 2 marshmallows. The payoff from the study came 14 years later when they're tracked down as they're about to go to university, and the 2 groups are compared, the ones who gobbled, the ones who waited. And it turns out the ones who waited get along much better with their peers. They're still able to delay gratification in pursuit of their goals, which is exactly what that's a test of. And this was a surprise. On the American University Entrance Exam, the SAT, which at that time had 1,600 total points, the kids who waited had a 210-point advantage over the kids who grabbed. This is really interesting because these are all children of parents at Stanford University. These are high IQ, high-achieving families. So what's going on? The difference seems to be that if you're not able to manage your impulse, and mind wandering is kind of a microcosm of that, then you're going to be more upset.